Hello everybody, my name's Ryan and I'm a driving instructor. Today I want to talk about the DVSA and the theory test. I also want to address my last video about the DVSA failing, or are they failing? That was the question, of the DVSA failing. But first, 2 passes last week. One which passed first time, she had a little bit of experience but passed first time, and one that took 5 goes, passed with 1 minor. Good stuff. At least she was persevering and determined to pass. That's all you're after sometimes, somebody who wants to pass a driving test. So about this theory test, as you may or may not know, I drive an automatic. I've nearly always driven automatics. I've always driven automatics since about 2012. I passed a manual driving test quite a long time ago in 2004, but since passing I've driven different types of cars, but mostly automatic. Drove buses, they're all automatic, all the trucks are automatic. The DVSA have been attempting to reduce waiting times on the theory test 5 weeks to 1 week since taking over from the Pearson company who used to do them. They haven't quite succeeded. Is the DVSA failing? Well, they haven't quite succeeded in this one either. But potentially they could get a few more tests in and reduce that number quite quickly. My actual question about the theory test is though, why is the test manual car centric? Why, since the government has been pushing for everyone to go electric, is the theory test still manual? You might not know it, but electric and most hybrids don't actually have any physical gears to change, because they don't work that way. I don't teach manual gear changes to my students because they're unnecessary and irrelevant. It's not something you would do in normal things. If somebody wants to go towing, for example, in an automatic, then they would probably learn how to do that in a towing class. Again, they're not testing towing, so that could be another issue. Because I don't teach it doesn't mean I need to teach it. Well, I show my students how it works. I don't actually do it myself. I've never manually changed gear in an automatic. I've never felt the need to in most of the cars that I've driven. What's the point in it? In fact, even Conquer Driving, the guy that does the 5-in-1 videos and on the theory test stuff, he actually did a full video on it a few days ago, and he's a really decent description. You should go and watch that video. If I can find it, I'll put a link somewhere. The reason I think that the theory test should change to less manual centric, or maybe even eliminating those manual questions, is because of the questions that they ask. For example, what will happen when they hold the clutch pedal down for too long? How's the automatic person, even if they've had lessons, going to know that? Why is it a bad technique to coast? Why do I have to change gear going down a hill? Because you don't in the auto, you don't in electric cars either. You have regen and things like this which automatically brakes for you. So why is it still in the theory test? Apparently the DVSA have blogged about this. They are going to do it, but they're not going to do it yet. I'm pretty sure the actual theory test needs to change as well though. As the number of automatic instructors increases and the manuals slowly but surely disappear, then I think that needs to happen. I think that they need to change the theory test. Once you pass your test, then that's it. You don't do it again. You don't do a theory test. Maybe you should. Maybe you should do like they do in Australia and Germany and everywhere else. After 2 years you go and do another little theory test. Maybe after 5 years. Imagine the uproar. You got told you were going to do another theory test after 5 years after passing your driving test. You should do, shouldn't you? Maybe you should do it. Maybe you should go back and do a theory test on the app, the free one, because see how good you are. See if you can score the pass rate. See if you can do those hazard perception videos. See how good your perception of that is. As you don't need to do this theory test or do anything else once you pass, then maybe we should. Maybe when we get to license renewal and we go and do our renewal of our license online every 10 years, then maybe we should do an eyesight test as well. Maybe we could do that online. Must be a way of doing it online. Must be a way of projecting through that. Do an eyesight test and a quick 20 question theory test once you've passed, maybe every 10 years. What happens if you tell people that though? Well, there's going to be uproar. We're going to kick off. They're going to be happy. They're going to be really angry about, why do I got to do a theory test after 10 years? Well, I've been driving 50 years. Why do I have to do a theory test? Well, because you probably actually know it. That's the point. If you know and you can drive, then you probably don't need to do it at all. The point is that if you got that question, for example, I'm sat in the middle of a lane of a motorway and there's now nothing on my left hand side, what should I do? Go in the right hand lane, stay in the middle lane, go left, or exit on the next junction? Stupid questions like that. But actually, somebody who's passed a driving test and has experience of driving should know the answer to that. They should know what the speed limit is on a national speed limit single carriageway country road. They should absolutely know that. They should know that they stick to 20 miles an hour in towns and cities where it's marked as 20. The Welsh Government just come out with that, just said everything's going 20 apart from really specific roads. Maybe we should be paying more attention to what we're doing on the road. That's why I upload bad driving videos, people running red lights. I had one the other day. Somebody pulled out roundabout. Somebody slagged me off in the comments because they felt that somebody hadn't done anything wrong. If you actually follow the books, then both of those cars would have absolutely failed their driving test. One was over the line, absolutely, and my pupil that was in the car at the time actually did start to brake and did actually say, oh, they were coming out close. If my pupils thought that, then maybe those cars shouldn't have pulled out on it. Lots of things around theory tests that we need to fix. Are we going to fix it? Well, they are, eventually. But why not just do it next week? Why not just take those questions out? Don't know. Just what people are asking, why is it the way it is? One thing I'm going to go back to was somebody that asked me a problem about last week. I've got the notes on it here because I can't possibly remember it all. SG, thanks for your comments. SG must be a driving instructor who is very, hey, like me, he's very angry. He's very, very angry, and he said all of these things in the comments, and to a point I partially agree with him, but sometimes. You can't blame the DVSA for the backlog, it's COVID. Well, I can, and I am. That's the point. That's why I've been at the DVSA failing, because they're not clearing that backlog. Since their chief executive, Loveday Ryder, sat in front of that select committee and said, I do not know how to clear the backlog. And the MP said, well, why don't you know? You're the chief executive of the DVSA. Surely you must know this. And he went, well, I don't know how to do it. 400,000 for driving tests, he says. No, it wasn't. It was 1.3 million because we were 9 months in lockdown. People seem to forget that. Go and do research. And he says about every test centre I use has hired more examiners, or the chief examiner's gone out. Yeah, so what? That doesn't clear backlogs. That doesn't make a difference. I talked about hiring more examiners. Surely you realise it's not an appealing job at all. That's got bugger all to do with me whether it's appealing or not. If it's not appealing, well, somebody's got to do it right. And if you advertise those jobs, they disappeared. So somebody likes doing it. It's a civil servant job. They get 27% contribution. Oh yeah, well, you make them redundant after the things don't we want. It's civil service. They go back into civil service. Isn't that the point of civil service? It's not up to the DVSA to increase pass rate. It's our job as instructors. I agree to amount. The private runners and the problems that the private thing, yeah, that's a problem. I also said about somebody taking the test in 20-30 hours of local knowledge. All right, and I was being ambitious. But I still think that if you were in Gateshead, training in Gateshead, there's literally no way you'd pass a driving test in Alnwick with zero experience. And somebody agreed with me and then deleted the comment. Even if people fail in certain areas, then most of the time it's not going to take them 20-30 hours if you've taught them properly. Possibly. I can't possibly agree with that. I don't know the answer to that, and that's conjecture. I said you're equally as annoyed as me. Why not make YouTube videos and post them and get roasted? Videos come out and roasting you back. Yeah, there's a lot of issues around what he thinks and what I think, and they obviously don't match. You could take learners to other areas. You know what? You probably could. Is it going to improve them? Probably not. Waiting times right now, and I was on about in the last video, Gosforth is actually 8 weeks away, Barrow in Furness is December, Carlisle is actually December, Alnwick is late November. We looked at Blythe, and Blythe was saying January, so there is still a backlog, whatever you say about it. It kind of says that I'm not doing a very good job in teaching my pupils. Well, that's not what the point is. The point is that the DVSA aren't doing the job properly to clear the whole thing off. Surely that's the point, is that the DVSA are failing to provide that regular driving test service. It goes on about mentioning the universal test. No right or wrong. There is no right or wrong. I absolutely agree with you. But there is a standard test of driving. That's why I mentioned this one before. The standard check is there to see if everybody's singing off the same hymn sheet, and we know they're not. We absolutely know that. SG, Rob, we know that. We know that everybody isn't doing it. That was the point. That why not, if everybody is doing it different, why not get them together and do a bit of training? Is it because you're scared of going in the room with somebody else who might contradict you? Possibly. I absolutely think that sometimes somebody might decide to out you as potentially doing something wrong. But I'd want to know that. I'd want to know if I was going wrong, me personally. I'd want to know if I was doing something wrong. It's impossible to expect us to all do the same way. I think it is. I think it is totally possible to teach people properly in the same way if you've all been trained correctly. Our job as instructors is to present test-ready clients. That's what I wrote in the comments. It's a poor way to look at my job, is it? Really? No, yeah, our job is to present test-ready clients that are ready to drive. You can't always read into comments what you want. It doesn't always work that way. It doesn't work that way. My job, he says, Rob says, my job is to teach people to drive safely in any conditions on any road. Do you do night lessons, or do you do lessons? You keep your pupils on for 12 months and teach them up the north of Scotland in the heavy snow? No, didn't think so. Do you teach them when it's absolutely pissing down with rain? How can you predict that? How can you predict thunderstorms? Lovely day today, supposed to thunderstorm later. How could you possibly take everybody to every level of condition of road and show them? I think that's impossible. I literally do think that's impossible. What happens if you get somebody in March and they're doing 3 till 5 or something like that, and you're training them up 3 till 5 every week? They'll never do a dart lesson. Ever. Because they'll be passed by September, October. I don't think that's true. I don't think that trying to teach everybody with every road condition, we're not in Germany, it's impossible to do that. And be confident when they're ready for the test. Yeah, well, what you're trying to do is make people confident for a driving test. But I think you've gone down a rabbit hole a bit here. I would like to see your learner with 0 experience of Alnwick, without any training on any videos, any of my videos, do an Alnwick test route and pass. There are conditions in certain areas. If you've trained somebody in a city, are going to be different to somebody that's been trained in a countryside. I don't care what you say about that. If a person was trained in the countryside and wanted to pass in Gosforth, heavy industrial area, dual carriageways, big roundabouts, then they would need training in Gosforth. No question about it. There's literally no way that somebody from Alnwick who's passed a driving test and only driven in Alnwick is quite capable of passing a test in Gosforth. I understand that they will gain experience once they've passed that test, there's no doubt about that. But when we think about it, and we really think hard about it, if somebody's passed their test in a different test centre and they go to a new area, they are going to learn it anyway. Whether they can pass the test there or not, that's a whole different matter. That's about teaching somebody to drive, and you mentioned this in your comment. Oh, I teach them to drive properly in all conditions. Well, I've just mentioned that it's impossible. It doesn't matter what you try and say, it's impossible. Anyway, I've gone on a bit too long. If you're still watching, fantastic. If you're wondering about all my shirts, I've got about 100 different football, NFL shirts, all sorts of different shirts. I've got a different one every time. Today's Sunday. This video doesn't go out till Friday, but I filmed this on Sunday because I had a bit of spare time in between my lessons. How do you feel about the theory test? How do you feel that it's gone? How do you feel about your theory test? Did you think it was right or wrong? Did you ever miss it because of 1 mark and you've been doing auto and thinking, well, if that manual question wasn't in there, I probably would have passed? Probably. Anyway, doesn't matter. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.